Hey, good afternoon. This is the 12 p.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern probate mastery group Mastermind, normally with Chad Corbett. And unfortunately, for some personal reasons, Chad's not able to be on the call today to ask me. My name is Bill Gross. I'm a student and practitioner of Chad's and his work. And so he asked me to jump in as the substitute teacher. So that means if I write on the chalkboard, you cannot throw the eraser over chalk at me, for those of you old enough to know what that means. And the goal here today is to continue. I can share with you what I do every day. I'm a real estate broker. I don't sell software or coaching or anything. I just sell houses for people who need it, and I find houses for investors. All my lead gen is in probate. I took Chad's class 2.5, almost 3 years ago, and built a business around what I understood he was teaching me. And as a result, I've done a tremendous business. I'll share with you within my company, I'm at EXP Realty, our standard of excellence is icon. I've been tracking on that goal for this past year. I closed, if you go in the MLS, 42 sides, 30 transactions in the last 12 months. And again, all my lead gen has been probate. I do get some past client business. I do get referrals, but really I was having a production 3 years ago. I came out of management and coaching. And I knew about probate real estate. Just a quick story on me. I'd been in the business for a long time, and I knew about probate. I knew the basics, like many agents. I'd done a couple, but I didn't lead generate it at all. I got into management and coaching and recruiting, and found out of that after 3 years, realizing it was a dead end and going back to production. But I didn't have one listing. I didn't have one buyer. I didn't have one lead when it started. I had knowledge. I had a Rolodex. I had a desire. And I took Chad's program at that time, which was Probate Mastery. It was 3 days. It seemed like it was 3 or 4 hours a day, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I took it and recorded it and listened to it that night. And I listened to it intently while I was writing out kind of a plan. And one thing that Chad did on that call was he challenged us to go to court and see it live. Now, this was before COVID, and see the process. And so I actually did. I live in Los Angeles, and I put a suit and tie on, and I went down to court and watched probate court for a day. And I realized that most of the action kind of happened in the beginning of the day from 8:30 till about 10 o'clock. And I went back the next day and went back the next day. And I just said, well, I'll go for the rest of the week. And at the end of the week, I said, wow, this is fascinating. I was learning so much about the competition, what they do well, what the competitors don't do well that I can do better, learning about the process of probate to help how to figure out how to get business. And I literally went there every day. And over the first 30 days, wrote a very detailed business plan of lead generation, just specifically within probate. And launched my business April 2019. So about 2.5 years ago from scratch. And 2019, I forget how much I closed. 2020, I closed about 30 deals. And this year I'm on track to close 35 sales. I have about 42 sides and about 30 sales over the last 12-month period. So I built a nice business. It sounds like a lot more than it is. Los Angeles, we have some big transactions. Mine tend to be much smaller because probate does. But I really built a business that has given me a consistent income in business, as well as building a team, as well as I think building a future business I can work on. And it's really all using Chad's philosophy, his vision, building on the information he gave us and using that as a start. And I tune into these calls regularly, and I'm very in touch with what goes on. I've taken every other coaching program I've seen. I've paid for them just to learn, to be an expert. I actually mark myself as the LAProbateExpert.com. But it all goes back to the fundamentals. And I tell people, Chad gives away more for free than any other company I know. So definitely I think you're in the right spot. So I'm a little humbled today to be asked to fill in Chad's enormous shoes, or Chad's mobile shoes, because he's been traveling over the country here of late, and I don't quite do that. I have big feet though, so I can fit his shoes, but I don't think I quite have his style. And unlike Chad, I speak quickly and I can mumble at times. So feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to put a note in the chat box if you have a question. What I will tell you is that I normally don't do myself Zoom calls during the day because I'm a broker. I have business to run. And I normally watch recorded material after hours. While I'm doing work. But when I do go, I know that the more I participate, the more value I get out of it. So I'll challenge you to put yourself on the line. And I know for some of you it's uncomfortable, but I think sales success, sales growth, all growth is at its core uncomfortable. It's about getting comfortable with what we're currently uncomfortable with. So I encourage you to turn on your cameras, unmute your phone, ask a question, participate. If you have a question, there's a lot of people that watch this program, and just know that you're doing a service with the other guy or gal who is watching who doesn't have maybe the courage you do to ask the question. So I know it can be tough. I saw one hand up when we started, and now I see that it's down. So I don't know if that means she gave up on us and left or not. But okay, so Jamie. Jamie has a hand up, and William, yourself, and yourself, Jamie. First, Jamie, where are you from? What area?
I'm from Seattle, Washington. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I think you told me you're getting into real estate, correct?
Yeah. Just recently started getting into real estate. I've been a nurse for over 20 years, oncology, and I'm ready to make a jump out of that. I'm semi-retired right now. So I have, I have a chunk of money to kind of start investing and figuring out what I want to do with it. And real estate has been really interesting to me. I've owned my own house. I've had a couple properties myself as landlord. So, um, but my question is, I took the class Probate Mastery, and I really, really like it because I really like the servant part of it.
Mhm.
Um, However, how do I start this process if I don't have my license yet? I mean, I know there's a couple options, but it feels like I'm kind of taking the cart before the horse if I, don't do any if I don't get my license and then do that, or can I still?
Great question. So when people get into it as an agent, they have one or two goals. It's to increase income and or to build wealth, right?
Mhm.
So we create income by creating transactions we get commissions on, or that we flip for profits or we sell for profits. We build wealth by finding properties that we want to keep as long-term rentals, most commonly. So in this program, I've met numerous people that are either agents or non-agents.
Mhm.
There are plenty of investors, part-time investors and full-time investors who use these exact same principles without having the tool of being a real estate agent. Now, I am a real estate agent, so I can really only share my personal experience. I also invest and also buy and flip property. But I would say if your goal is to get your license, is that what I heard you say you're in the process of getting a license?
Yeah, I am in the process.
The marketing's the same. It's the same people. You would be approaching them as an investor. And I do think that as a real estate agent, I often approach estates, petitioners, administrator, executors of estates who have property, who just want to sell it for cash. And so you'll shade your hat at some point, perhaps, or you have to change the disclosure. When you're an agent, you have to be clear up front if you're acting as an agent or acting as a principal. If I'm talking to a homeowner and I think I'm going to want to buy the property as an investor, I don't tell them I'm an agent and I make sure they're clear I'm not representing them. But if I want to list the property, once I tell them I'm an agent, I'm kind of stuck going down the road because I have a responsibility now to them to look out for their best interest and not use that information against them. But I would say if your goal is to get into it, I would wait for my license. I would put together a plan for an investor marketing approach to these homeowners. And then at some point, when you get your license, you can decide, do you want to change the marketing to be appropriate for an agent, i.e. I'm looking for listings? Or, and one advantage you might have would be to maybe bring on somebody in your team to act as the investor. I'll share with you guys one of my tactics is I partner with investors all the time. I have one, I would say my closest partner, who we actually do our marketing to homeowners and marketing to attorneys, because once we have the data, we can market to the same person twice from two different angles. I call that two bites of the apple, right? You could take a marketing letter that you might mail to a family. Hey, I see the property possibly for sale, and I'd like to represent you as your agent. You can send the same person a letter from the investor's letterhead. Hey, I see the property for sale, or maybe for sale. I'd like to make you a cash offer. And so we coordinate that data. So as we find out properties are already listed, we pull them off the list or whatever the story might be. But it gives us really kind of intel to work both sides of that equation. So you might start as an investor with getting a license. You might try to solicit a friend or a colleague to continue to market together. And it also cuts some of the costs up front. We share a virtual assistant. We share some of the marketing costs as a result of partnering together, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay. So come back and tell us how you're doing. Okay, Jamie?
I will. Thank you.
Great. Robert asked what market I'm in. I'm in Los Angeles, California. LA is the largest probate court in America, or sometimes close second to Atlanta. I think Fulton County, I believe it's the largest consistently. It's obviously a large metro area. And so what I want to say is what works in some areas doesn't work in other areas, obviously, like any business. I would say our metro area might be 20 times bigger than some, but we probably have 30 times the competition. And I'm not saying that negatively. I'm just saying, the competitors all kind of do the same thing. And if you avoid them, even in my market, there's plenty of business to be had. It's ridiculous how much there is. But I'm in Los Angeles, California as a probate agent. I work really, I would say my goal is to work all of California, but certainly all of Southern California. And I've listed or sold properties this year in 8 different counties in Southern California. Actually, 8 different counties in California, of which probably 5 were Southern and 3 were Central. So hopefully that answers that question. Great. Now, if you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in here. Again, the substitute teacher, but I believe I've taken Chad's program and worked with it and been real successful with it. I actually created my own program, not coaching. I really kind of supplement this. When Chad was doing this, I felt like I wanted a place for people who are working it to get together and create some more camaraderie amongst agents. And I'm strictly agent focused. So I do a program called Probate Weekly, Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time, probateweekly.com. So I talk about probate every day with investors, wholesalers, attorneys. Literally, there's a program of I'm a member of the Bar Association, even though I'm not an attorney, I'm an affiliate member, and I watch their programs as well. So I'm in this business every day. This is what I do. This is all that. Can we get on your podcast? Sure, Robert. I'd love to have you come on. Probateweekly.com. Love to have you join. And then I also have available Bill Gross EXP if you want to check out the past recordings of it. But again, I don't think there's anything different. All the time people ask about the data, I refer them back to all the leads. And when they ask about coaching, while there are numerous programs, I definitely recommend Chad's. And I think Chad's program is particularly good in that it's about the content, not just the marketing. And I find the companies that really focus on the marketing miss the mark. What I tell people is what's critical in your marketing is your come from. If you come from the right spot, then you can at least aim in the right direction, hit something. If you come from is just to get a transaction, real estate's a very difficult business. You're constantly out looking for your deals. If you come from as being of service, you're going to accumulate people who appreciate you, respect you, and want to work with you, and will give you business. You don't have to worry about it as much. So that's a big part of the business is where you come from. But yeah, so I do teach that on a regular basis. So great. Richard De La Cruz, I see your hand up. How can I help you?
Okay, I'm looking to get into some sort of a YouTube kind of launch where I would have at least 3 or 4 videos regarding probate, where instead of sending them to a website, I can send them to my videos. But my question to you, Bill, what will be 3 to 4 questions that really are challenges that come up in probate? Because I'm totally new at this. I signed up for the Probate Mastery. I have not taken the whole thing yet. I just really began. I just got my leads last week. So I'm really new at this, but I know there is an immense amount of potential in this niche. But the point, so going back to the question is, what would you say, what would be good 3 to 4 videos that you can come up with that you can answer some challenging questions that they might come up with?
Okay. Richard, what market area are you in? Where are you looking to sell?
That's a good question. I forgot to mention that. I'm in Queens, New York. However, I subscribe to the Nassau, which is like 35 minutes away from me because Queens is already taken up. So I'll deal with, driving out another 30 minutes or so.
I understand. Why you're not working in Queens?
Oh, well, the Queens probate leads are already taken. Someone else, so it wasn't available. So
it's not available through alltheleads.com, you're saying?
Right, exactly.
Okay. So, and then if I said to you, what is your marketing strategy, or what's your business plan in a nutshell? What's your approach going to look like?
Well, the question is a little broad. I mean, I'm not sure exactly. When you say business plan, what do you mean?
So here's what I'd say. I don't know that Chad teaches it the way that I do. In fact, I don't think he does. But there's a lot of ways to get business in probate. I teach a class called 11 Ways, and these are the 11 ways that I've used, 11 different individual tactics. The way I look at it is the probate case is the target, and you can attack the target from multiple angles of attack. In the military, there's bad guys, behind a hill. You can send infantry, and they can lob mortars, but you also can send in the Air Force and drop bombs. You could have the Navy send missiles, right? There's multiple ways to attack the same spot. I don't mean to think of our customers as enemies like that, but there's multiple ways to appeal to them to get you to do business with them. And so you need to think of the way or ways that you're going to attack them. An example, the post in the group last week on Medicare. You could make a whole career if you really listen to what Chad was talking about. I don't, because it doesn't match up with me. I'll get to that. But if you just did what he said on that one thing, which was approach the people who would know the families that had Medicare clawbacks or Medicare liens or such, and you just approach that, that could be a whole career, just that one tactic. Now, my premise or my thesis is, if you attack the same people from 2 or 3 angles, if you attack them from 3 angles, you'll be 4 or 5 times more successful because there's synergies between your marketing. 1 + 1, if you work together, is 3, not 2. So I'm saying to you, you have to get clear on what your marketing is. And when I ask that question, what I would recommend to you is you need to do it. And here's what I did. When I started from scratch, I knew real estate. I knew the process. I knew the procedures. I knew the forums. I didn't have any clients in real estate. So I did an inventory of myself. What are my strengths? And I want to play to those. So I'll give you an example. What are my strengths? I'm older. That's a weakness in that maybe I don't have the same energy as when I was young. But on the positive side, I have experience. And I think when people see somebody older, they, all things equal, assume them to be a little wiser. They assume they have some experience. I have gray hair. I look older. I like to wear suits and ties. When I go to court, I dress very formally. They're real to show up in a polo shirt. When I go to court or go to lunch with an attorney, I always wear a formal dark suit, white shirt, Brooks Brothers tie. And I like doing that. Some people can't. I like that. So I look at my assets and say, well, how does that work for me? So I'm marketing, including going to court as often as possible, meeting with attorneys as often as possible. You follow me? I'm looking at my assets. What are yours? I don't know. You have to do a self-assessment of where you're going to do well. I've met people, for example, who were paralegals, and they knew paralegals and attorneys that did estate planning and probate work. Well, that's a big advantage. I didn't have that. But if you have that, you need to work on that asset. So you need to do an assessment of what assets you have to your business, and then think about how do you want to attack these cases. Yes, you can buy the data, and you can call or mail but I would say to you, and also, what else are you going to do to get to those people besides those? You need to think about what that looks like. So when you talk about making videos, I would say you want your branding, you want your value proposition to line up with your activities. So who are you going to talk to that's going to watch your video that you want to persuade? Is your target attorneys? Is your target the petitioner? Is your target the petitioner maybe who is very educated and high-tech, self-helpy? Or is your petitioner low-tech, overwhelmed, elderly, doesn't know what they're doing? So you need to think about your audience and then make your marketing plan that's appropriate for that group of people, if that makes sense. And I really urge you to spend the time to plan it ahead of time, and it should resonate. When you get that plan, it should go, wow, this just makes sense. For me, going to court every day made sense. I enjoyed it. I was just going to be good at it. I looked the part. I dressed the part. I have a briefcase that looks like I'm an attorney. I made everything work for me that worked in that program. So you need to find a way to, or at least the goal, is to make all of your marketing messaging to your clients or your prospects consistent with what your goal is with them. So what are you going to do to market to them? You say you're going to go to, I'm sorry, not Suffolk County. You say you go to, not Queens, but
Nassau
County. Oh, Nassau County. Isn't that Long Island?
Right, Long Island, correct. Nassau and Suffolk is Long Island.
Is Plainview in Suffolk County?
It's in Suffolk, correct.
My son-in-law is from Plainview, so I spent a little bit of time there. So I would say to you, what are you going to do there? If you're talking about going to petitioners, are they going to be likely working with attorneys? I would try to market a message to both of them, because part of your business is going to be you invite a petitioner, but they have an attorney, and the petitioner might want to work with you, but you need to make sure the attorney also feels like it's a good choice, or doesn't fight you, or doesn't push the referral to somebody else. So you have to think about, to answer your question, who's your prospect and how are you approaching them, and then make your marketing message go to that. I'll share with you mine. So because I want to work with attorneys are highly educated by definition and think a lot of themselves. They think of themselves as being higher educated than average people. So I want them to feel like they're dealing with an expert. So what I would never want, let me back up. What I want is when my petitioner says, well, I found a great agent to help us. What's his name? Bill Rose. I want them to think of me as an expert. So I position myself as a teacher to real estate agents. I am, as it turns out. But part of why I do that is when an attorney sees me teaching 40 real estate agents how to handle probate real estate, they assume I know what I'm doing. Now, does that mean I know what I'm doing? It really doesn't. I could be a complete idiot and be, impressing as a bunch of fluff. The truth is I don't. I know what I'm doing. But my point is my messaging was about me being an expert compared to my competition, right? So what's your messaging? What are you trying to impress people? Does that answer your question, Richard?
Yes and no.
Okay. Well, I'll say it's a process. It's not an answer as much as a process. And I'm glad to help, come back here or come back to my call and share as you develop it. But you're willing to put some thought. The thing I think most people don't do, we all say, I'm going to think about it. We don't really think about what I did literally. What I wrote my plan was I turned off the phone, sat it. I have in my office, I had 2 desks, sat at my work desk, not my phone computer desk, with a pad of paper and wrote out notes of what I wanted to do. And literally for hours at a time, sat there and wrote out a plan. And I would urge you to really think through. You've been in Chad's training. Think through what he's challenging you to do and write out a plan based on really what you want to do, where all the pieces and puzzle have to look like. And I think if you put some time in there, it will come to you.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else have a question? Is it Divinov? How do you pronounce your name?
My first name is Dan. I can't figure out how to change. I don't know if my last name D is on first. As you probably guess, I have technical challenges. Haven't figured that out. So my question is a bit of twofold, and it kind of piggybacks off of Richard's as well. My strategy is closely modeled behind yours, and I'm very interested in the attorney aspect of it. I'm in Sarasota, Florida, which is Southwest Florida. I spoke a couple of days, week ago, 2 weeks ago. Affluent community. You can't do a probate here without an attorney. I'm struggling to find the people that need help with guidance that way, because you can't do the probate without an attorney here. Pretty much almost everyone knows grandparents are here from out of state. Their affairs are very well tidied up. You might have some slips here and there, but for the most part, I found that when I would cold call or when I would pull the list, because I would do it myself, I have some spare time, so I do it myself. When I call, the property's already listed. They've already had an attorney. So I'm trying to kind of, get it on the front end and make the relationship happen with the attorneys, so the lawyers. So I approached the couple and I suggested the cross advertising, to where I would have a Q&A, like a flyer, and then I, pepper a neighborhood with, not your regular realtor, care about you, try to promote the attorney and the importance of an estate plan, even for young people, old people, whatever. I put out a question in the group one day. I didn't get anything back. Have you done a cross advertising with an attorney? Because of their solicitation laws, I don't want to step into legal ground to where, first of all, if you want to sound like someone that knows what they're talking about, I should know how to phrase that when it comes to the cross advertising. So do you use a flyer? Do you have any model that I can model my co-advertising with an attorney is my first question. Go ahead.
Let's take one at a time, just because I'll forget the first one when you're in the middle of the second one. There's a couple of things I've done in this area and I continue to do that are fruitful. So marketing with attorneys is difficult. I didn't ask the question, are you an agent or are you an investor or both?
I am licensed. I'm an agent.
So you're approaching people to list property with you first as your primary focus.
I'm a full-time cop. So I guess the way that it's worked out for me, because I do real estate part-time and I'm a deputy. I injured myself, so I actually have a beard, but that's kind of it's easier for me to get in contact with some of the attorneys or the lawyers around, because I have friends.
For sure.
I'm not, they're a different realm of what I'm used to from the beginning, because I've, used to dealing with the criminal aspect of it.
Well, my question is, you're approaching them from a business point of view today as a real estate agent to list a property and help them sell, not as an investor. The primary entree is as an agent, right?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Okay. So there's a couple of things you can do. First off, marketing with attorneys, I find, every business has this kind of the normal way of operating, right? Like First, thanks for your service as a deputy. Appreciate you keeping us safe or sleeping at night while I'm selling houses. And people have a way of doing business, and every industry kind of has that methodology. And I find with attorneys, and I know Los Sarasota as well, I used to live in Boca. I wouldn't move back to Boca in a few years, that almost every attorney, if you call them up and have a vague reference to them, I was talking to Joe Smith, who's an attorney. He mentioned that he worked in estate planning, like to learn about it. Can we meet full lunch? I found that almost any attorney would meet full lunch. Now, that may or may not be a strategy you want to pursue, but that's one avenue. So when I started, I did a lot of that. I would call them up and I would never ask them for business. I would never talk about approaching. I really went more for the relationship. That was one way to market to attorneys. The co-marketing, the problem is we as realtors think of ourselves as a marketing and salesperson. Attorneys don't, and they discover this when they get there into practice is more of their life is about being a businessman and less about their life as being an attorney. They have to do the legal work as the delivery, but they need to spend time on marketing and business and hiring people and counting and other things that have nothing to do with law, and they hate it. They hate talking about it, they hate doing it, they look down on it. So I don't know, when I've worked with attorneys to co-market with them, I just never found a way to position myself that was effective, with one exception. Estate planning attorneys are always looking to generate business. So what I found was that I could interview them. I do a Zoom call with them one-on-one. I built up my own weekly call, so how they'll come in as a guest on my weekly call to promote the concept of estate planning and then their particular service. I really believe, and I know Florida enough to know that you're better off with an estate plan and a living trust than you were without it. Not as much so in California where it's even more of an issue. But I do know that it's effective. And so one tactic would be to contact attorneys you know. If you already know them, I would invite them to lunch if lunch works for you. I don't know your schedule. If lunch doesn't work, then I would say just call them on the phone and talk about your business and asking them about how they build their practice if they're doing estate planning, and that kind of work would be an effective way. And I use all the time. I interview an estate planning attorney once a month, twice a month on my show, and I regularly try to bring them into my system that way. I'll also share with you, I don't think that everybody has to have an attorney, even in Florida. I've literally interviewed Florida attorneys on my show, and I've interviewed a service that I've used in the past that I'm really proud of called easy-probate.com. It's kind of like LegalZoom, but all they do is probate. And so for petitioners who don't have an attorney or aren't happy with attorneys, it's a very inexpensive way for them to pick up the pieces and get the probate process through. So that's worked really well for me. I also, on the trust side, connected with a company, Trust and Wills. I'm actually interviewing them on my show as well. But I'll give you a shortcut version, which is, again, they're like LegalZoom, but they just do trusts and wills. Very expensive. They've done thousands, I forget the number, I want to say hundreds of thousands or so. But also, you can give them a discount. You can email them a link as a client to say, here's a 10% discount. They charge $650, and if you use me, it's whatever, $580 or whatever for a couple to do a living trust, which is nice. And you can buy them in bulk if you want to, or buy them individually. So that's a service I use. I'll be promoting them on my program here in a couple of weeks. So all that helps give you a couple of things to think about. But I would say I would go to petitioners who don't have attorneys. It'd be great. If you talk to them, they're not happy with their attorney, I try to steer them out of attorneys if I'm not working with an attorney. And in estate planning, I definitely co-market with attorneys. And I know it drives some of them crazy when I tell them that I think that everybody should have a living trust. Not everybody needs to use an attorney to do it because you're not that complicated. There are people who all they have is the one house and maybe they're married. They don't really need an attorney estate plan. Really, estate plan is more for mixed families, multiple divorced kids from divorces, businesses.
Which is 50% of the United States of this.
Okay,
So
well, then the other 50 doesn't. Like,
look at
so
that.
to get the 50 that don't into trust and wills and get one done, and the ones that do need that, of course, then they need to get that. So I would agree.
As far as the lunches, and yes, I'll tell you, the attorneys eat more lunches than cops do. So yes, they do that. And
That's just cops are filled after all those donuts and coffee.
right, and
lunch.
if we plan for lunch after breakfast, that's what we do. But as far as the attorney, so that's been my approach. I contact the offices or I contact an attorney. Long story short, we figure out how to meet. I've met with multiple attorneys and lawyers that way. The one that was receptive to looking at literature as an idea of what I would suggest to do co-advertising with, he said, put something together and let me look at it because they do have the guidelines. And I want to make sure that I'm within those guidelines so that when he reviews it, he can give it the green light and I'll take the first expense without having to ask him to share that. And then I'll circle prospect the neighborhood or whatever it may be, and I'll mail it out so that we can see if we can generate some business together. I'm looking for some idea or a guideline of what that brochure may look like so that it's actually, I don't know, in compliance and concise enough to where it won't lose interest and he will be agreeable to using it.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to give you an answer of something I haven't done personally. I'd like to say the advantage I have here is I do this every day. I've been doing it for a while. I'd be glad to show you what I do. But anything else I give is conjecture. You know, mailing pieces, it's a complicated business. The people who mail spend a lot of money on it, yet do it at scale. The one thing I tell you is everybody knows who's made a living mailing does, you know, tens of thousands of pieces monthly. They test it and they find it and then it works and they do some big numbers to make it scale. So I don't know that you're going to find what you're looking for or not. I don't know that's going to be an avenue for you. I have another idea for you to think about. I will come back to you. I see Winston has his hand up. Winston, you have a question I can talk to you about?
Yes, I do. Maybe I misunderstood you. You say 50% of the people going through probate don't need an attorney. Is that correct?
I think Daniel was saying that 50% of people don't need a complicated living trust, but are either married or single and have a property and no kids from prior divorces. So they will.
I answered based on what you were saying as far as the families that don't need an estate plan, a complicated an estate plan, unless they're divorced families or there's more dynamics to it. And I said that pretty much puts us at 50% of the country.
I would say that 80 or 90% of cases in LA County, I can't speak to other counties, but in LA County, 80% of that don't need an attorney if they use a good service like easy-probate.com. Now, easy-probate has an attorney if you need one, but to be honest, they do a better job with the paperwork than most attorneys do. And since most cases are routine, they're going to do a better job. So I will say, at least in LA, that not 80% would be better served with easy-probate than they would with an attorney. There's only one error, only one property. It's just a simple process. That's how condition. Richard, do you have an alternative answer to that or concern?
Okay. Now, I was trying to understand where the need or the necessity arises. I mean, so that's as far as estate planning, because I was looking from the perspective that without estate planning, you have to go into probate. And I live in Northern California, which means that going into probate is going to be costly.
Yes.
So it's really worth paying for that estate plan.
Well, the estate plan will avoid probate is the cheapest money. If you prepare, like anything else in life, you prepare, you avoid the problem. Once you need probate, like I said, there's all kinds of probate cases that need attorneys. You know, I had a client who passed and the decedent had a girlfriend who said she was a wife and he married her somehow secretly, and so she's entitled to half the property, which isn't necessarily true in California, but you got to litigate that process. And there's another lady who died, and then she pulled out a document that said that the decedent authorized her to live there as long as the last animal was alive, and she was taking care of 4 cats and 3 fish and 2 birds and a dog or something. So I've seen all kinds of crazy litigation, and that's where you need to have an attorney. But if it's just processing the paperwork and filing for one piece of property, in my experience, you're going to get better service from a probate service that's professional and highly experienced and successful than an attorney. Here's a statistic in LA County. When I download all the cases, 95% of cases are done by attorneys in probate who've done 1 probate or less in the last 2 years. And I don't think customers understand how important it is. The attorneys don't know what they're doing. They haven't been in probate court. They don't know the probate notes. They don't know the process or procedures. So, okay, I got asked again to repeat the website, and that was easy-probate.com is the service I use for clients who don't need a probate attorney. And then trustandwill.com is a company that I use to recommend for trust accounts. And I do that, and I can offer a discount to my customer. I'll get paid by either of these companies, anything. I just believe in the process and help out with it. Okay. Dan, another thing I want to circle back to that other people might be interested in. Oh, I'm sorry. Stephanie, you have your hand up.
Thanks. So I had a question. I heard you talking about you do a weekly call every week. So I've worked for an investor for the last 2 years and we worked probate leads. I got my license, relocated to Savannah, and am now implementing probate as my niche. I have partnered with a local company called well, it's a nationwide company, but it's the local branch, which is CareSource, that moves families from their property into assisted living. She's now exclusively working with me because of my experience in probate. And I am interested in
Nice.
jumping into any other calls for probate stuff. So if you're doing a weekly call, I just wanted to know where I can find that so I can join in for more ideas as I build this niche for myself.
Sure. I host a call every Thursday at 4 p.m. called probateweekly.com. You can register there. I don't sell anything. I'm just an agent and love to share and work with other people and maybe look for ways to work together and help make some money together. So I'd love to talk to Stephanie about more about what you're doing and seeing if there's ways we can help you expand other markets. And then it's all recorded on my YouTube channel. Bill Gross EXP is my YouTube channel, or you can go to probateweeklyepisodes.com and see all the past episodes. But love to
Thank
have
you.
you. No, thank you, Stephanie. It sounds exciting. Love to catch up with you and find out what you're doing and see if there's someone who can work together on that. Because
Yeah.
real estate is definitely a collaboration game. The more people get together, and that's why I do it. Again, 1 + 1 is 3. If I can find a way to work with you or share an idea with you, we can work together. We can both make more money.
Yeah,
So great.
absolutely.
So again, I think what applies to everybody. I'm sure it's more of a California thing than other states, but deadbeat tenants in probate property. I guess deadbeat might be a harsh term. So people who don't have a clear legal right to be in the property in probate. In my experience, they go together quite a bit. Now, I think a lot of it's because of LA, and we just happen to have. It's shocking to find out we have the highest percentage of poverty of any state in the country. That was the case when I was younger. That's true today. And probate tends to skew lower income. So as a result, we end up getting probates regularly that either have squatters or tenants with questionable agreements or perceived relationships that have no legal bearing on the property to the heir, ex-girlfriends, ex-wives who worked out of the property and such, cousins who've been living there for 10 years. So it's a regular part of our business and my business to work with eviction attorneys and to work with those landlord advocate services. The more militant tenants get, the more we need to have those professional services. And they tend to be ex-law enforcement officers. And if you find the right guy who knows the law and can work within the law properly and can take a property, again, I think that's more of a California thing, but it's probably true in some other states. We have a property right now that with this tenant, with this person in the property, we can't get in, take pictures, we can't do inspections, we can't sell the property, can't show the property to sell it, can't hold it open. We could sell it as is for about $450,000, and an investor will take over the problem. If we can get her out and clean it up a little bit and whatever, it'd sell for about $600 to $650. So there's a lot of money on the table. If you find somebody who's good at getting problem people out of the property, you can make some money. And I would say to you as a former law enforcement, my guess is there's certain private investigators, and that's part of the process because they'll lie about their disabilities, they'll lie about their relationships. And I just find that those people in that field tend to be former law enforcement, and you'd have a better relationship with them right front than out. So it's something I'm looking to. Anybody who does that and has an experience with that nationally or can share their experience with that nationally, let me know. Stephanie, your hands up to hit a button number with you.
Yeah, I'm going through that with 2 situations right now, and I'm not sure where to go with it. The first one, 2 of the heirs will not remove themselves from the property, and they are saying that they have rights to it, so they're not going to leave. And so I'm guessing in that kind of situation, I've actually referred her to an attorney because her job pays for an attorney that I work with. So we're waiting to see whether or not she has to go to court and the courts will force a sale or what we can do. The other one, it was her son's house and he had a roommate. The son had served him with an eviction 2 weeks prior to death. Then he died. And now the lady that the mother has, the executor of the estate, has evicted them twice. And it has failed in court to go through the eviction process. So now I don't know. Now we don't know what to do. But she's on a fixed income. So she can't afford an attorney. So what can I suggest to her? Is she, pretty much just going to lose the house? Or is there a way for us to work around that so we can get him out and get it listed?
So that problem, I think, is going to be growing. Now we'll get into a political discussion, but I just think there's more of these situations every day than there were. These things didn't happen 10 years ago with the frequency they happen today, and they seem to be growing. Number one. Number two, I'd be very careful about referring things to an attorney. I just find, as a general rule, they're just too quick to take the case and some money and not as quick to get the job done. I'm in the results business. I only get paid if I get my seller the house a price they agree to and sign the papers and close the deal. I don't get paid to string us along for 2 years while we play around. And unfortunately, attorneys do get paid in many cases along the way. I do find with attorneys that, like every business, the top 1% are amazing. The top 5% create great value for their customers. And the bottom 80 or 90%, like real estate agents, are pretty much worthless. And you can be very clear who you're for business too. And I also find, like real estate agents, that attorneys, and even more so, like doctors, the more specialized, the more valuable they are to their customer. So there are attorneys who work in this field, but they work a very narrow piece of it, and they don't go out of that, and they'll refer it to somebody else who does the other pieces. The guy who's willing to start the eviction and then do a partition and then file the probate, trust me, I don't know every state, but that's generally not going to be a good solution for you and your client. So I would urge you to really look for specialists when you can to find somebody who can do the job. And while I don't obviously have an answer in your area of Georgia, and I don't have a Rolodex that quite goes that far, that's why I'm on this call. That's why I host my own call, is to build that network up with people. Because if you find the right attorney for this problem, and then there's a partition action here in California, I think it's also called that in most states, where you have two owners of a property, one wants to sell, one doesn't. In most states, you can force an open market sale at a fair market price to force the sale for one of the owners. Now, there's some controversy to that, and I don't want to get into the politics of it, but I will say that you want to find an attorney who can help your clients that specialize in that niche of the business. But definitely, with attorneys, you want to find a specialist, not a generalist. Manuel, I see your hand up. Manuel Fernandez.
All right. I wanted to piggyback on the lawyer thing for Florida. I am a Florida real estate agent, and this was something I looked up a long time ago. But in Florida, except for very few cases, an attorney is absolutely required. And any legal questions, you need to push that onto the lawyer.
And so let me clarify. I agree with you 100%. I don't have to give legal advice. I'm not allowed to in California either. In almost every state, the bar has created the Bar Association, which attorneys belong to, have been able to get codified that nobody can give legal advice. That rule has been in the past so broad that, for example, legals couldn't exist. One of the rules was that not only that all law firms had to be owned by attorneys. Well, that seems a bit unreasonable, because hospitals don't have to be owned by doctors. Why would law firm have to be owned by attorneys? And as a result, the laws have loosened up a bit. Easy-Probate has an attorney, and they meet the criteria and do business in Florida. They've done hundreds and hundreds of probates in the state of Florida and are experts on the law. So when I say not to go to an attorney, but to go to the service, I'm more referring to their format or the way they look to a client. As you're not going to walk into an attorney's office and pay $400 an hour to get started. You're going to go online, maybe get on the phone and use a credit card and spend $100 to get started. But Manuel, you're right. Number one, certain laws, states require attorneys. And in my experience, Easy-Probate meets those requirements in 50 states and has done multiple in those states. Number two, you're right. We should never give legal advice. That's what attorneys are for. And I'm always careful not to give legal advice to clients, but make a referral to somebody who can help them. Okay. Does that help clarify a little bit?
Yes. And there was, I wanted to piggyback on, for Richard's situation, he was saying he's a new agent and he's in New York. My personal thought would be to start advertising, go ahead and advertise, go ahead and put yourself out there, but at the same time, go ahead and educate yourself. So you're not wasting time in either direction.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I coach agents in this area, and coach agents in my team, I tell them that this is a business. Now, there are people who have a job called them a real estate agent and they work for somebody else. That's a job. But when you're in business as a real estate agent or a broker, and it's really a mindset, it's not a legal decision. If you're building a business, you need to have a business plan that will take you out 2 years. It's going to take 2 years before really start hitting your stride. That doesn't mean you won't get your first deal for 2 years, but you need to have a marketing plan where your average prospect is 2 years from now. So you're starting now to get leads and planting seeds. So 2 years from now, that steady crop starts coming in. That's my experience. And the first 2 years are challenging because you're writing exceptions. They're shorter term deals. I don't think this marketing, like any other, is really designed to get deals within the first 30 days or 60 to 90 days. That's not to say you won't get some, but the majority will come out 2 years from now. You have to have a longer perspective in your activities. Okay. Any other questions? Nancy, you raising your hand, I think.
Figured out how to change my name.
Congratulations.
Winning. A couple of things as far as the, and I want to mention something to Stephanie, and this is not legal advice, and I think you and I chatted on one of the threads. I find from law enforcement standpoint, I find it that a lot of people kind of leave a little bit of the evictions out, the importance of naming every person or using the terminology to evict everyone in the house, because at least for Florida, probably other states as well, tenant laws, landlord-tenant laws, once you establish residence, which in some cases means a toothbrush and 3 shirts, Florida adjusted some with the time frame that I guess it's about 2 weeks or so. Once someone's established residence, they have to be evicted themselves. And that could have been, somebody shacked up one of their girlfriends that their wife doesn't know about, whatever that may be. But they establish residence, then they take the process takes individually, they have to be evicted out unless the eviction has the wording that everyone in the home has to be out. Now, during a probate where people don't want to sign, I don't even know if they can sell the house. So I wouldn't even know how to start evicting people at that point. However, in just general squatter, tenant, or whatever difficult tenants, that has to be just worded properly. And a lot of people want to do cash for keys. In my opinion, that's a lot of luck. And that's a lot of, you're hoping for the best, but it's not a plan, because if they renege on the agreement, you could be a couple of $100 out, or you could prolong it by another 3 months or 6 months or whatever it may be. So my suggestion is go the legal route and see how that works out, because those are the only people that actually have the authority to do it. Otherwise, you're hoping on a handshake with people who's already not complying with whatever it is that you're asking them to do. So they make promises.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing, as far as the lawyer aspect of it is, when we talk about expert, I found that most of the lawyers that I've talked with, they're happy with people like us, that we know the difference between a personal representative who has the authority to sell and some of the terminology. I don't think that they're looking for a very in-depth knowledge of the probate process. They just want more people that are going to solve the problems. I kind of call it conflict real estate, to where you come up with some suggestions and you have the team available that you can go and ask to resolve some of the issues that the families go through. And when given legal advice, I outsmarted myself one day. I tried to talk a little bit more than I should have to a lawyer who actually said that I am not as familiar with the law as an attorney, which it kind of clipped my wings, and I realized that simplifying it with them, it's easier than overcomplicating it and saying that you're just, fountain of knowledge when it comes to their field. So,
well, I will say that, attorneys don't ever want me to tell the woman expert. They have to always be made to feel like they're the smartest person. And I'll say this, in general, there's exceptions, in general, attorneys, their key skill is that they sound like they know what they're talking about even when they don't. That's why all politicians are attorneys. Every single congressman and U.S. senator in the United States, other than maybe a handful, other than 3 or 4, are attorneys, because they sound like they know what they're talking about. They're practiced at thinking on their feet. It may not be accurate. And so the problem that you have is that people will pick an attorney to represent them because they sound like they know what they're talking about. You can't tell me no more. Literally, I have cases every day where I talk to an attorney where I know he's made a fundamental error, and I'm trying to tiptoe in to help him see the mistake, to fix it so our client can sell the house. But I can't just say, dude, I've sold 30 properties in probate court last 2 years and represented buyers 15 times, and this is your only court sale ever. Let me tell you, and I track every single sale in the county. Let me tell you your mistake here. I can't say that. So you're absolutely right. You can very much tiptoe around. I'll tell you, in California today, in LA, literally today. Eviction courts have nonprofit organizations with people with recent law school graduates who either have a law license or don't, who are literally stopping tenants in the hallway saying, do you have legal representation? We'll take your case. And the first thing we do is tell them, because in California, you have the choice to have a civil trial with a judge or before a jury. They know the jury, because of COVID, will delay things 6 months. First thing they do is acquire a jury trial. So this process, and this is a political movement that's, I assure you, it's in California, it's going to come across the country. This area of the work, I'm not here to get the details today, and I'm not an expert on it. I'm an expert in the problems and an expert in solving the problems. And every state is a little different, every market is a little different. But in many markets, these problems are opportunities. And I would urge you to find the best practitioner. I found just last week a great landlord advocate. And I have 2 listings that have tenant problems. I think he solved one of them, which has been stuck in the mud for months. I believe I'm going to get paid here in about 30 days. So I would urge you as agents or investors, find the experts in those areas. Don't learn it to be the expert. Know enough to find the expert and put them in your Rolodex and use them. And that's what Chad talks about in his coaching all along. Okay, here I had to wrap it up, but let's continue the conversation if you want on the Facebook group. This was not live streamed today because of some technical issue. I'm not really sure why. Just know that Chad wanted to be here today, but for personal reasons can't. We shall keep him in our prayers and his family in our prayers if you're such a mindful of that. But I sure appreciate the chance to help you guys today. My name is Bill Gross. I'm in the chat there regularly. I'm on this call somewhat regularly, but I'm always available to help. So if you have any questions at any time, feel free to reach out to me. Call me or text me, email me. I'm glad here to help. Chad does this call every week on Tuesdays. We do it at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and whatever in the middle is, depending on where you live. I appreciate you guys being here at the Probate Mastery group and the Probate Mastery alumni group as well. Thank you to Daniel and Stephanie, Emmanuel and Winston. And if I left anybody off, thank you for stepping in, asking questions. Really appreciate you guys. Make it a great week. Okay. Thank you so much.